Welcome to the return edition of Outside the Box TV. I'm Alex Ansary. It's July 12th, 2014. It's good to be back in the Portland area. I've been back since March 16th, 2014, and this would be edition 315. For those that have seen my show before, this show did run on Access Community TV, PCM TV, between the years 2004 and 2011. The last episode of Outside the Box TV in Portland, Oregon was aired on September 13th, 2011, episode 314. Since that time, I have lived in Dallas, Texas for 1 year. I have lived in parts of Colorado, including Wyoming. And when I was in Colorado, I lived off the grid for about a year in the San Luis Valley of South Central Colorado. That's just north of the New Mexican border. Of course, I'm going to talk more about some of these experiences that I've had traveling, some things that I've learned. It's interesting how your perspective changes, especially if you're a Portlander, how your perspective changes on Portland when you move outside this city, away from its influence, and you move into another part of the country, another part of the planet, and then come back. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to share with you some of the different perspectives that I have on this city that I was born in. And it's an interesting city to come back to in the year 2014. It's a very popular time for Portland, being the #1 city to move to. We'll talk about how realistic this title is of Portland being a livable place. We'll also examine how long that reputation is going to last, with the popularity of Portland going up, 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 and away, and property taxes going up for people that live in this area. I'm concerned there might be a lot of displacement in the coming years for people that cannot afford to pay to live in such a popular part of the country. I want to mention the show times for the return of Outside the Box, the series. This show airs on Wednesdays on Channel 23 at 10 p.m. That's in Portland only. Also on Saturday, Channel 22 in Portland only at 6:30. And Sunday on Channel 11, that's the whole metro area. That is 5 o'clock in the evening. Again, this show is going to air on a weekly basis. On Wednesday, Channel 23 at 10 p.m. Saturday on Channel 22 at 6:30. Both of those, 22 and 23, are in Portland only. And then, of course, we have Sunday, Channel 11 at 5 p.m. My website is alexansary.tv. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/alexansary. If any of you are curious what I've been putting out the last 3 years, 2.5 years to be specific, since I've lived in Portland, you can find some videos there. You can also find my Daily Motion channel, where I have some of the best of Outside the Box interviews posted. You can also follow me on Twitter. You can also add me on Facebook, and there's also a like page for the show. So when the show is produced, it's going to go online. You can find it at those places. I'm going to be doing an update to alexansary.tv in the future. You can also contact me at alex_ansary at hotmail.com. Excuse me, that's alex_ansary at hotmail.com. So this is really an introduction to the return of Outside the Box TV. You can also even call it OTB 2.0. One major difference between what was being discussed then 3 years ago and what is being discussed now, there is greater emphasis on self-responsibility. So you're going to hear some shows, you're going to hear some things, you're going to hear some perspectives that are going to piss you off. And so there's some advice that I want to relay to the new viewer as well as the old viewer. So before we begin, this show is not being done to be popular. I don't subscribe to celebrityism. Some people that think that at one point I was a celebrity, nothing could be farther from the truth. I have never done this show for money. There's been a number of questions that I've received for years from people that watch this show. This show does not generate an income. This show is not a career. This is my spiritual practice. Now, you may not agree with my spiritual views. You may not agree with my opinions, but thank God for the First Amendment. Thank God for freedom of speech, and thank God for Access TV. Because after living away from this city for so long, it became clear to me earlier in this year while staying in Kansas City, Missouri, that I had unfinished work to do in Portland. And there are warnings that I already put out there over the air, and also words of encouragement on how this city could flourish and survive the coming challenges that I believe that our city and our country and our planet will be facing. But it's very important that you understand that this show is not being produced to be popular, okay? I'm not branding myself. I'm not a businessman. Technically, I'm homeless. I live in my truck in Portland, Oregon. You don't do things like this to be popular. People have asked me for years, Alex, have you had the government come down on you for the things that you've talked about for years and years and years in relation to 9/11 and the truth beyond that, the truth about 9/11, this global event that wasn't just simply an inside job, but a global job where we have Russia, we have China, we have the United States, we have Great Britain, we have other European countries, NATO, all involved in that particular region of the earth in order to extract its resources, its oil, its lithium. It's also a very strategic place on the planet. There's a lot of things that I've talked about for years dealing with government involvement in some pretty nefarious things. And there's been a lot of assumptions over the years that by this point in time that I would be murdered, that something bad would happen to me, that there's no way that if I wasn't a Fed that they would allow me to be on the air. And so there is realistically looking at the problems that we face, and then there's ridiculous paranoia that exists out there that is simply not needed, and it gets in the way of you taking something away from the show. My goal is to give you information, outside the box views and perspectives on how things truly might be. And that involves empowerment. That involves self-responsibility. Before things were ramping up, it wasn't even 2012 yet. And this show is beyond the bipolar altruistic worldview of either a successful in-game scenario where they depopulate 90% of us, and there's this other worldview that many people have been attached to for years, that we would go through a collective shift in consciousness, and we would just be able to rise above the problems of our world by becoming so aware and so psychic that lies would not be believable any longer. And so people like myself have been demonized by members of the mainstream New Age community. And what's very important for you to understand is that spiritual understandings, spiritual views, spiritual teachings, these things are not New Age. So one needs to have discernment in separating genuine spiritual concepts versus the New Age propaganda, which has polluted our world today, just like many of the world's religions. And there are many religions that many people are mind slaves to. Sometimes it's an Abrahamic religion. Sometimes it is the religion of money. This is very, very big in Portland. A lot of people don't believe that they are slaves to this religion of money, of materialism, and playing that game, you know, trying to stay in the have bracket of the have-not realities that so many people are facing. Then there's scientism, people saying, oh no, unless the official views of science, official authorities in control of those writing the scientific books, unless they acknowledge some of these things taking place, the solar influence over human consciousness and cycles, for example, how the solar cycles sometimes influences the cycles of man. Oh no, unless science addresses it, they won't look at it. So that's another religion. And then there's the religion of the public educational school system. And that is how young children, you know, it's the womb to tomb program, learn how to obey, learn how to follow rules. And then of course there's the programming and other concepts and dogma that we learn from our parents. As these shows progress, we'll be talking more about programming, propaganda, dogma, because the goal of this show is to impart a perspective to you that we are responsible for the world that we live in right now, for the world that we're creating. And so when I start talking about Portland as a city, we're looking at Portland as a microcosm for a larger picture. I'm not attacking Portland, the city of my birth. In fact, I feel a very strong affinity for the spirit of Portland, but Portland is a name that was given to it in just the last several hundred years. I believe that Portland has another name. But for now, we will describe Portland as the city of the wounded goddess that is now undergoing a massive invasion at this time, a massive migration. And this is not to slam or attack any of you. Let's go back to the before we begin section of this show. You are going to hear things that are going to offend you. That is not the point of these subjects, to offend you, to further isolate myself from you in the city that I was born, but to show that the city that we are becoming is anything but livable for certain people. Unless, of course, you have a certain mentality and you're okay with certain evils of the city, which we will get into in just a little bit. So if you identify as a man or a woman or a white man or a white woman or a black man, black woman, or even Hispanic or Asian, and maybe you identify with the city that you're in, this is low consciousness. You are beyond your name. You are beyond the gender of a woman. You are beyond the gender of a man. This is not a New Age teaching. There is more to your consciousness. So do not degrade yourself. Do not automatically be a slave to those programs inside your consciousness that say, oh no, I don't like what Alex Ansary said. I'm going to completely throw out everything that he's saying because I don't like the way that he's saying it. I don't like emotion. I'm just going to throw it in the garbage. I'm not doing the show to be popular. I would suggest that you take the information that relates to you and apply it. If you actually do care about this city, you will be honest with yourself as to what's happening to the city, the things that are happening to some people in the city, and you will not be an arrogant human being that acts like a child when you hear things that you don't want to hear about reality. So I don't have all the answers. We will be talking about the concept of what is the true light, what is the true creator, what is the true nature of the dark side, what does it mean to be a human being? Why are we here on this planet during these amazing, amazing times? Why are we here? What is there to learn from these circumstances that we're in? How are we not victims? How are we co-creators of this reality? These questions are going to come up time and time again. I have nothing to sell you. There are ways that people have chosen to help me over the years, but I have nothing to sell you, okay? I have no products to sell you. I have no game to play with you. And there's a lot of people that do play games. There's a lot of people that do manipulate. And I want to say that there are certain influences that I have had in the past. In the past, underline, in the past. They are no longer influential to me now. Many of my previous heroes are dead to me. Some of them are on talk radio. Some of them are not. You know, recently I met someone that told me some fairly disturbing things. You see, I grew up with a hero. I grew up thinking the highest of a particular person. Come to meet somebody in the last week that had experiences with this particular person in the last decade. And while I will not go into the details, throughout my life, I have seen my heroes destroyed before my very eyes. And I have been put into many situations where, you know, the only thing that I can trust truly at this point is myself. And while I love humanity and I love other people, I do not let the voices of others in the alternative or mainstream media influence the content on this show. And in fact, conspiracy theory has become a dirty word, just like referring to me as a celebrity. Dirty word. Foul, doesn't really make sense. I would recommend you just ditch it. When you see me in the streets, don't rush up and give me a hug and say, honey, this guy's a celebrity. I am a human being that is struggling in your city to find work, which I cannot find, and shelter, which I cannot find. I am a human being, okay, that is in your city now, that is trying to get back on my feet in a city where I have no family, that I've been gone from 2.5 years. My email is alex_ansary@hotmail.com for those of you that would like to help assist me. Because the shows in the future are going to be subject-based shows. This is an introduction to Outside the Box TV for those that have never watched it. However, I'm not going to go deep into 9/11 truth. If you do not know that we are a Big Brother society right now, if you do not know that the powers that be are about to stage World War III at some point in our lifetime, if you don't know about some of these basic fundamentals, if you don't know that there are drones above Portland that aren't even manned, it's time to educate yourself. This current incarnation of Outside the Box TV with Alex Ansary is about the ideas. It is about the philosophy. And until we are able to come to terms with the fact that many of us are programmed to be in a box. Many people are stuck in a box. They don't know themselves. They don't know other people. They are not connected to their real self or higher self. They are playing out an archetype. Many people are playing out a program. And so when people identify, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm white, I'm black, I'm American, I'm not American, I'm educated. Oh, I didn't go to school, poor me. You know, you have these programs that people are stuck in, and that's how people are controlled by forces known and unknown. And we're going to talk about some of those potential unknown forces of influence and deception in a future episode. So I want people to understand that I am not affiliated with anyone in the alternative media, certain voices, personalities. There are certain folks that I do not listen to any longer. Now, what you need to understand as you hear about some of these things happening in our world is that there's a knee-jerk reaction, programming within you that says, give me a solution if you're going to tell me what's wrong, and that is programming. And we need to address our programming. We live in a complex world, and there are many different root causes for why the world has ended up the way that it is. One of the main root causes is the imbalance between man and woman, also masculine and feminine energies. And for those that don't know, you can be a heterosexual man and be connected with your feminine self. You can be a heterosexual female and be connected with your masculine self. You can also be homosexual and be connected to some of those energies. This doesn't have anything to do with heterosexual, homosexual, or gender. Masculine, feminine energies, think balance, left and right brain, versus the logical side, the side that can think, the masculine side, the protector, and then in cooperation with the right side of the brain, feminine energies and qualities, compassion, intuition, creativity, things of that nature. Right now, we are seeing the social effects of the fragmentation of consciousness. That is what we are looking at. We are looking at a society of people that don't know who they are. They don't know who others are. They certainly don't know people across the pond or across the sea, thousands of miles away from us, but they have no problem voting in certain ways that allow this dark machine to keep continuing. The deaths, the drone attacks, the invasions, the destabilization of the Middle East. There are people that have found it okay in their own conscience to vote for people that are involved in genocide and murder. So there are repercussions coming for this. And in a future episode, we'll talk about the manufactured growth of China, the missile technology transfers, other forms of technological transfers, the artificial way that China has ended up in the position that it's in now. The alarming amounts of acreages, that land that China is buying in the United States, the drills that have been done for decades with this country, with troops from foreign countries, from Poland, from Chile. There's one video you can watch on YouTube where troops from over 60 countries practiced a mock invasion of Tampa Bay, Florida. That was 2012. They were rescuing the mayor from some sort of a domestic terrorist drill. It's important for people to know that at this stage of the game, since 9/11, it's now been 13 years, everything that's been done has been done to destroy the infrastructure of this country and the image of America. The good things about this country, the Second Amendment, First Amendment, so on and so forth, Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, they are going to destroy this country with our own resources. In fact, it's happening right now. And what a lot of people don't seem to understand is that we are already at the, I would say, the entry point of a manufactured civil war that's perpetuated by the mainstream media and also ignorant people in the alternative media that don't understand what the larger agenda is. And the larger agenda is not us against ourselves, the American people against DHS. Long term, it's dealing with foreign troops that are invading this country because they've been invited in by our own government to restore order, just like the way they practiced for years and years and years. So as long as people are listening to alternative media sources that are trying to direct them into a manufactured civil war conflict with our own government, they're not even aware of what's going on and what the agenda is. You don't want to be reactionary. You want to look at the bigger picture. And so if you truly think you have an open mind, start being critical of some of the information that you've been taking in and some of the things that you may have believed to be true. Because the truth, as I understand, is that we're going to be here for perhaps longer than that which we think. We're not going to be collectively raptured out of this. We're going to have to deal with the global DNA database and why they really built that. We're going to have to deal with the robot takeover, the integration of technology with humanity. We're going to have to deal with coming and future false flags, mass shootings, and the repercussions of that as they come after the Second Amendment. we're going to have to deal with the fact that we have a government that's been hijacked by dark occult forces, other special interests beyond, there are forces that we know that control this government, and there are forces that we don't know. And the whole thing has been done to demonize the American woman and the American man for standing down as all these things have been taking place around us. We've had so much time. We've had a significant amount of time since September 11th, 2001, to really look in that mirror and go, do we stand for this? I know there are people that know about the law of attraction, and there is a misunderstanding of the law of attraction that says, oh, no, all there is yes. All there is just focusing on what we want to create. But there's selfishness. There is selfishness, and that is unconscious behavior when you're only concerned about your own physical body and your own family. It almost becomes tribalist. When you do good for others, then you're being revolutionary. When you speak out against these evils of our world, you better your own lives. So even though there's just this obsession with one interpretation of how the law of attraction works, there's also a point in our lives to say no. In the same way that you would say no to a rapist that is trying to violate your free will. There are moments in our lives where we say no to injustice. We speak our minds, regardless of the repercussions. There are people that think that I live a certain life based on the things that I have done, the interviews I've conducted, the reports I've done on air, and all it's brought is judgment from society and fear from people that are concerned that when the hammer drops, they're going to come looking for certain people and they themselves will be affected. We have to look at this nature of psychology and how it hurts us as a society. We have no current underground railroad system for people that fall through the cracks when they do good. We have a city right now moving into Portland that will let their own activists die in the streets. I'm a living example of that. There are people that don't want me to show emotion. They want me to focus on the facts. They want me to focus on the news. Well, it's a miracle I'm still alive. And when I left Portland, I wanted to see what society was like outside the city. There's this brainwashing, this cult-like attitude within the city that, well, first of all, it comes from a misunderstanding of who we are. We're more than Portlanders. We're human beings. You can even say we're earthlings. You can even say we're cosmic beings, but we're more than our first, middle, and last name. We're more than an Oregonian, and I am a fourth generational Oregonian, by the way, on my mother's side. But we're so much more than that. But when you start to talk about the dark side of life, of cities, of what they're turning into, of the level of consciousness that exists in these cities, a lack of compassion and growing apathy amongst the inhabitants of these cities. It needs to be addressed, it needs to be talked about, and we should work to prevent ourselves from being manipulated by our environment. So what kind of environment is Portland really? So we're surrounded by trees to a certain extent, but Willamette is also known as the Valley of Death. We have a heavily polluted water supply, waterway. We have a questionable water supply. The federal government is trying to control how things are done here in Portland, and they want to cap Mount Tabor. The utility bills are going far higher than anything we've seen before. The current mayor wants to propose a street tax that would be in excess of $100 per resident in the city of Portland, even more for businesses. They also want a nightclub tax. We've got unmanned aerial drones flying above our cities. In fact, earlier today I saw a drone go back and forth several times over the park that I was laying in, Irving Park, just up the street, right off Fremont and 7th. And so we've gotten so used to military exercises as well in the city. You know, it was a big deal in 2008 when the Navy Special Warfare Unit flew over the city and started doing drills. They freaked the city of Portland out at that time. Now we've become so used to the M86 Little Bird choppers flying over our city. It's become part of the ambiance, part of the background, just like the trees. But back to the water, you know, the city itself and the image that it has of being a livable city. As more and more people come here from across the nation, that's going to change. Things are going to become more expensive, And there's already some articles around town being written about the older homes that are being demolished for these new housing projects. And so we're seeing the rise of Agenda 21 style micro homes in Portland, Oregon. How much time before people start thumb scanning and having their iris scanned in order to enter these highly secured homes? Meanwhile, the geoengineering, the terraforming, for those that don't know, weather manipulation, some call it chemtrails. This is something that you should know about because it's not some theory, it's not something that people are hallucinating. The technology does exist, and since the 1950s and 60s, Russia and the United States have been sharing this technology and has more uses than weather modification, and there are more facilities on the planet in addition to HAARP that heat up the ionosphere and even bust holes in our ozone. All of that is really unsafe at a time where our Earth's magnetic field is moving 40 to 50 miles per year towards Siberia. Magnetic north is moving. Our Earth's magnetic field is thinning, and this next solar cycle is going to be kick-ass, for better or for worse. And when that happens in the post-2020s, I think that's when we're going to see a lot of geopolitical tensions rise by design between China and the United States. And when that happens, Portland will be affected. Portland will be affected in a major way. The west coast of this country is going to be affected in a serious way if and when the defenses of this country come down, by design, mind you. So as all these weapons of war are being developed, keep in mind our government is in business with the Communist Chinese. We're selling land to them in Los Angeles. They scan in their own cargo. So this is not xenophobia. This is not promoting fear of Chinese people or fear of Russian people or fear of foreigners from other countries. But there is something that we have seen historically, a trend throughout time, of government sending in forces from another country into another country that they have no direct association with. So there's no real compassion for the people of that country that they're sent to. And we've seen what they've done with our military. We've seen what they've done with NATO and how many different countries the Western forces are in right now. There is so much hatred that is being bred right now towards Americans, American men, American women. If we are ever occupied, which I believe is the game plan, and I'm on record for saying that since the year 2007. In a future episode, I'm going to play some interesting clips from the past to kind of bring this point home, that this is not a new subject that we are discussing. It is a subject that historically people have laughed at, and we are going to document that and redocument that people think that this is a big joke. And we live in a society where people don't support their own when they choose to go in a different path. So to wrap up this part of our talk, when you go out and you use your birth name and you talk about things that are unpopular, when you talk about behaviors, people will assume that you're attacking them personally. This is mind control. This is programming. You're not going to receive any information from the show whatsoever if you assume that you are being personally attacked because I am addressing the influence of the matrix itself. And there are so many different ways in which men and women have been turned against each other. There are so many different ways in which middle managers prefer to have a pretty woman working underneath them as opposed to having a man or an overweight woman working for them. You could see this in Portland. You can see this in the service industry. And with a lot of people being displaced, this creates a lot of negative energy. A lot of people don't understand what one goes through when they're homeless on the streets of Portland, when they're living in their vehicle, as I am. You have to work very hard to hold on to your mental health, to not go down those dark alleyways of drug addiction, of hurting yourself, of hurting others. And one thing that I've learned is that when you speak about your own experiences, if someone assumes that you have something that they don't, either good looks, money, family, or talent, then they will think that you're a bad person if you're struggling because they assume that you're too intelligent, too cunning, too young, too healthy, to fall through the cracks. So there is great denial in the Portland area about new forms of tribalism that have popped up. And what I want people to understand is that this city has been overtaken by outsiders. I don't hate you if you recently came to Portland, if you're a good person. If you came out of greed, if you came to take, if you came like an animal, I think that you're an expression of this mind virus. Not to be confused with your gender, not to be confused with your race, not to be confused with your nationality, but your attitude. Portland is a place that has a very special place in my heart. I was born here in 1980. I'm a fourth generational Oregonian. On my mother's side, my father came from the Middle East in 1967. They met in 1977 at Portland State University. I have a lot of history in this town. So I've seen where it was, and I see where it is now. And while there are some positive aspects of Portland, people might identify that to be the liberal side, the more carefree side, the more compassionate side to the homeless. A lot of these things are past tense. When you go on the air for 6 years and you talk about big stuff happening with our federal government, and you have the entirety of the whole city turn its back on you because you're controversial, when you see how deeply entrenched in poverty Portlanders are, that nobody has space, that everything is super expensive, $500 a month for a room for rent, really? And then you got to understand that this is a very white city. Now, I'm half white, half Afghanistan, okay? Don't tell me racism doesn't exist when you're told every day on the air that Afghans are doing this and Afghans are doing that. You can't tell me that because every day I'm hearing radio that sounds like it's straight from Nazi Germany. There is so much distortion that you're receiving on even Amy Goodman's program and NPR because so much fundamentalist radical Islam has been funded by the CIA. So if people take in this propaganda and programming, they don't have to have a swastika on their forehead. It's all coming from the subconscious. They subconsciously go, that person looks different, that person looks ethnic, that person, even if they think I'm Spanish or Italian, it really doesn't matter. There are people in this city and other cities that act like they're not comfortable going outside their tribe. They're not comfortable being with someone that looks like they're slightly outside their gene pool. I know what fear looks like. I know what it looks like to look at a crowd of people at Laurelhurst Park where I'm sleeping and spending time, a lot of time, trying to stay away from the nastiness of the streets, the hatred, the resentment, the manufactured divide of human consciousness. I see these people that are gathering and they're doing these things and they're literally, I will scan and I will look for the black guy. I will scan and I will look for the Hispanic. I will scan and I will look for the Middle Eastern guy. And I don't see it. I don't see it. And everything that I hear at the park is, oh, I'm just glad it's not this place. And it's not. And one time I heard an Indian woman say, there's no diversity here. What I feel is that you don't have to be racist necessarily to fear people that don't look like you. All you've got to do is just be bombarded with propaganda, fear about this group, that group, or the other, and you can develop a mentality where out of your own desire to keep yourself safe, you only associate with people that you believe are safe. And yet, even though I've heard about all these horrible things about the Middle East and Afghanistan, it's the United States and it's cities like Portland that have obsessions with things like BDSM, where people tie each other and have sex, tie each other up. This is a very freaky city. This is a much kinkier, more twisted city than most cities. And this is not a sexually liberated city. This is a sexually suppressed city, because if it wasn't so suppressed, you'd have more love between people. So what I'm trying to communicate is that Portland, Oregon has a pretty dark, twisted side to it. This is a book called Wicked Portland. And this book gets into the Shanghai. There was a day where they brought in the prostitutes. There was a day where they knocked out the sailors or knocked out men that drank too much at the bar. And they would wind up as slaves on the Willamette River. And they would be told that they were there to pay off their debt. They'd have to pay off their ticket. They'd end up in Astoria and they'd end up shanghaied out to somewhere else. And so a lot of women were brought here to be sex slaves. Have you ever wondered, for those of you that know about this, how many of those women may have been forced to have sex with many men in one particular night? And then you look at what's happened to Old Town Chinatown today, how dark it is. And I know some people believe in ghosts and some people don't believe in ghosts. That's fine to have different views on what we might call the supernatural. But this city that I have lived in for many years, there are vortexes in the city where, you hear about really violent crime happening in some of the same locations. 122nd and Powell, for example, 136th and Powell, for example. These are like demon portals. You hear about rapes and horrible things and people being cut up and children, cutting swastikas into each other. What's going on out there? How many Indians did they bury when this town was taken over? Portland, which I call the city of the wounded goddess. So if you love Portland, if you love this town you came to, it is not about just, getting a home and displacing a Portlander that's lived there their whole life and then taking a job and being a part of the new tech bubble. I understand Google is really, riding strong in the Portland area. A lot of companies out in Intel, a lot of people have moved here. I don't hate you at all. But what I'm saying is, if we want to keep things livable, we got to care about each other and we have to show compassion, because I believe that's revolutionary right now. And this town, I used to see a lot more community stuff. Now I see cliques that are based on tribalism. And it seems to be the tall whites versus the short browns. And it's not just happening to men, it's happening to women. And also, it's important that you understand that not everybody is participating in this propaganda. So I'm not promoting division. What I'm saying is it's happening within our own city. There are some people that do believe that this is a city that's safer for them and their children because it's not Oakland, California, because it's not Los Angeles, because it's not Las Vegas. So some people really just want to live amongst their own tribe, and they seem nervous around other people. Now, nothing makes people in Portland angrier than me saying that, but I'm not seeing anybody show me a different reality where there's welcoming love and there's some sort of structure for those to not fall under the cracks. So there's a lot of people that are talking to the mayor downtown about homeless issues, relating to a place for the homeless to go, to where they're not going to be beat up by the police or told to leave in the middle of the night, certain locations. And it's a really sad state of affairs because a lot of people are moving here from other cities to where it's illegal in other places, parts of California, to sleep in your vehicle. And I'm wondering, at what point are people like myself going to have to deal with that issue of sleeping in our vehicles and then being rousted by the police and told that we're breaking the law? And I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it in my car this winter living in Portland because it gets really cold and it gets really wet. The good part about Colorado was that even though it got down to -20 and -30, it was a dry cold. So if you had a fire inside your house, I was staying in a yurt that I basically found in the middle of nowhere in the high desert there. In a way, it was warmer than the Pacific Northwest because it's so moist here. So this is not necessarily an easy place to be homeless, even if it has an image of being a livable town. And this city used to have a reputation that it was a town or a city where young people would go to retire. And I think it still has that reputation, but I don't feel that it is a place where young people could just go and retire. It's become a much more expensive place to live. And like I said, rooms for rent are in excess of $600 per month, $700 per month. So if you're not working anywhere and you have those type of issues, you're not living anywhere. So there's another book called Dark Horse or Dark Rose, and this gets into organized crime and corruption in Portland. And in a future episode, I was going to go through the different historical moments that the city has faced that have been documented. This is Paul Stanford's City of Roses, and what this does, without naming names, is pretty much get into the history of Portland, the sex trade, the drug trade, and it pretty much talks about how the Portland police were involved in the drug trade itself by knocking over drug dealers, taking their drugs, reselling it, and also setting up some of their own officers to be shot that didn't want to go along with the corruption. Gotta understand, there's a reason why the Italians, the Yakuza, the Triads, why they've never developed a stronghold in the city of Portland, because the city of Portland traditionally has been the mob. Okay, the city of Portland themselves, and that's what Dark Rose gets into. Our city ran the whorehouses. There were hundreds of them. In the 1950s, the city of Portland was brought up on corruption charges. So to go back to racism, it really upsets people to hear these things or to even hear a perspective that these things are still going on. I choose to call it tribalism because that's less offensive to certain people. But there are people out there watching this show that understand what I'm talking about. And the only thing that I have to lose right now is my life. So it really matters not to me what you think about me. I'm pretty aware of what most people think about me. I'm pretty aware that I'm on your streets. So don't give me that type of attitude that I don't know what I'm talking about and none of this is true and that your country is not involved in a pillage, a rape, a mass murder in countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, because it is. It doesn't mean that you personally are responsible for it, but you are in a nation where that is going on, and you are in a city where there are men coming back that have killed people from my father's country. So that mass murder energy is here in the city of Portland. So this is a microcosm for a macrocosm. You can go ahead and look all you want at Washington, D.C. There's plenty of hatred right here for us to look at in Portland, Oregon. There's plenty of examples of have and have-nots. There's plenty of examples of local corruption that I suspect is involved in the illegal sex trade. You know, the average age that a girl is pushed into sex trafficking or trafficked is 13 years old, about the same age that boys start getting socked in the face, sucker punched by other boys that want to attack them. I was about the same age that I started getting punched in the face randomly every couple months. But women, there seems to be a very strong pattern for anyone that's willing to look at the truth that have been trafficked into this city, because they're actually Johns that come in from all over and they go right for 82nd. And so even though things have changed for some of you older Portlanders, there still is a lot of grit and grime on the streets, and a lot of those girls are really, really young. So even if you don't like the police and you don't like this and you don't like that, they're making arrests. There are things that are happening, but I don't believe that the city of Portland is really going after the root cause of a lot of this trafficking. And I think that traditionally, it's been proven that the city of Portland has been involved with a lot of this activity. And it's very possible that this is still going on today. So this is not just some happy city full of kumbaya, you know, and quinoa and granola, you know, and happy, shiny people holding hands that look like they're from the same gene pool or same part of Europe. This is a city with a lot of history and suffering and trafficking and murder and racism and segregation and displacement. There is a lot of history in Portland that a lot of people don't want to look at. And when you bring it up, they will get upset with you and get defensive as if they think that you're attacking them, which I think just happened a couple minutes ago. And it is sad, and it's the world that I live in, moment to moment, second to second. And it's unfortunate that more people don't see this. So in the next episode, things are going to be a little bit more structured. It's been very difficult for me personally the last couple months being in Portland. I've read about a certain amount of suicides in the city, and I understand where suicide comes from. I understand the things that drive people to drug addiction. I understand even some of the factors that drive some of those young girls to voluntarily allow themselves to be molested and to be under the control of a pimp. When people come from broken families, when women are molested by their fathers, there's a lot of this history in our nation, and Portland draws that parasite, the predator, the sex predator. There's so many sex predators in the city. Do you know what that feels like to be a good man in the city and to read the type of news that is going on? Do you understand or not? Or is there a disconnect? Because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good when you're walking in my shoes and you see people respond with fear sometimes, or respond with a certain level of anxiety, or just feeling the anxiety from them because of the energy that is in the air, because people don't understand what makes them anxious and fearful. I've seen people act a certain way when walking around certain streets. There is a spiritual sickness that is lingering in Portland, and there are far too many apathetic people, men and women, that don't care about other people being victimized. Okay, and it is a sickness, and so I will call out that programming in women and in men. This is not about color. This is not about gender. It encompasses all of humanity. So questions we ask ourselves: who are we? What are we doing here? What is the true nature of our circumstances? What is the true nature behind the intelligence of evil on the earth itself? We will come back to these questions in the future. Portland, Oregon, by the way, has private security at City Hall. It's called G4S. It's a British security firm. And so as we see this move from police to privatization of police or mercenaries, we're going to have to keep our eye on G4S security in Portland, Oregon, as well as drones, surveillance. I'm sure a lot of you already know that in the bars in Old Town, the Portland police are involved in surveillance on those patrons that are going to some of those bars. And people say, well, it's for safety. But yeah, but we get used to having our own police department act like their own intelligence agency. So they have all the information of everybody that went in the Dixie. And I don't think anyone that's being a patron of the Dixie or of the Dirty is a very intelligent person that's down to earth, that has all their marbles intact. However, do they deserve a certain amount of privacy? One would say so. It's unfortunate there's so much violence that happens in some of those establishments. Notice how we're starting to look more and more like Austin 6th Street. They open up the streets. Hey, have a big old party. We'll have the police over here ready to respond if someone acts belligerent or commits a crime. But don't worry, you're free now. And then you see the bouncers certified by the state working with the police. It's like one unit. And then you've got cameras in a lot of these bars where police are watching what's going on from the police department. So all this is really, really detrimental to civil liberties and public safety when you have police go rogue. In fact, there's a story out where an Oregon woman was raped to death by a cop in another state. And these are women that are knowingly going into a rough sex situation with a police officer. They're answering an ad on Craigslist, and they're bondaged up, and they're murdered. And we are seeing a rise of these stories of cops and others going rogue, murdering, raping, going on these rampages. And society is not seeing something really evil behind this. The interesting thing about society as a whole is the blind spot on the nature of evil, which we'll talk about in a future episode. Mankind has no problem calling the fellow man or the fellow woman unconscious. Mankind has no problem saying, oh, look at those stupid people over there. Oh, look, they're so ignorant. They won't look at the facts. But we have a blind spot understanding why is that? Why do we have such an issue looking at the facts of 9/11 or looking at the facts of why this DNA database is being built up on a global level, where that information is being shared with multiple nations, perhaps even more than we even know today? That's pretty creepy. Why do you think those cameras are really being installed for Homeland Security in the bus mall in Portland, Oregon? Why do you think for years they've been grooming us to allow hands down the pants at the airport, to allow our relatives and other loved ones to be touched and groped in such a manner? It's all programming. Why do you think all this sexualization of the youth is taking place right now? That's creepy, and it's sophisticated in the way that it's coming out. And the awareness of this in terms of the general public as to what Lady Gaga represents or Katy Perry represents or Rihanna represents, you know, these sex slave roles where they got collars and they're barking like a doggy, the awareness of what this is leading to is non-existent. Bill was even talking about some rap song he was listening to some women listen to. He was talking about, you know, them being beaten, being called hoes, and blah, 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 blah. You got to understand, when people listen to music where they are being demonized, it is a reflection of a deeper problem within consciousness itself. So until we can address the self-hatred programming, we're not going very far. We have about 10 more minutes. We're going to cover some other issues, but a lot of this relates to the path to the true self versus the false self, because a lot of people out there have taken on these programs and they have let it affect their family life. They have let it affect their work. They have let it affect their sense of well-being. And I believe that we are powerful enough to change the world into a better world, but we have to believe it. As long as we believe that we're victims, as long as we think that we can't do anything, then we're not going to do anything. You know, there is the counterfeit plastic goddess that is out there, and there is the paper tough guy or the paper tiger. Okay, so now I'm addressing programming in women, and I'm addressing programming in men. And there are people out there that think that it's okay to use your beauty, to use your brawn, to use your intelligence to manipulate or control others, or get others to worship you, or get others to give you things. I believe it is immoral to engage in deception of any form, any kind whatsoever. Whether you're trying to deceive someone for sex, whether you're trying to deceive someone to get a job, whether you're trying to deceive someone to get some money. And there is a blind spot to how immorality in our world opens us up to evil to happen to us sometimes. I mean, you look at certain people that have been violent with others throughout their whole life, and they live the later years of their life looking in the rear view mirror of their friggin' car. How horrible would that be? To know that you've done such horrible things, perhaps more harm than good, that you gotta look over your shoulder. I don't look over my shoulder, okay? I do what I do with my first and last name. I know that people have stepped back from me historically in my lifetime because of A, fear of something happening to them if they were to be associated with me, or B, just not liking what I'm saying about consciousness and these programs. So they get offended and they just walk out. It's a pretty familiar scenario. I cannot move this show forward and present new ideas unless I'm completely honest with you as to what's been going on with me the last 3 years and why I left Portland and how I felt that this city broke my heart in 2011 when I didn't have a place to live. I couldn't find a job. That's why I went to Dallas, Texas. That's why I eventually went off the grid in Colorado. And part of that was living a life of freedom to where I was in a position to invite other people down there to start building whatever they wanted to build. And I found that no matter how free a situation is, people aren't going to go unless there's running water, unless there's certain luxuries that come with living in the grid. We can also call it Gridlandia, kind of like Portlandia. Well, in this real Portlandia, there's a dark side that needs to be addressed for people that think that this is a shining example for the rest of the world. It's not a shining example for the rest of the world, and there are some good things about our city that are worth preserving. So if we approach our city with arrogance and judgment towards others that see our city in a less positive light, we could lose those positive things that we have come to cherish for so long. We know that they want to put fluoride in the water, your own city council. Fluoride is a neurotoxin. This is a fact. We know there are drones above our skies. We know our current mayor wants a street tax and a nightclub tax. We know that the Portland police are practicing, their own intelligence agency by filming people in certain bars. We know that the mental health issue with the homeless is getting worse in this city. And there is a major disconnect. And what people don't understand is that when you don't have a home and you're isolated from society, it doesn't matter how good looking you are, it doesn't matter how intelligent you are, self-destruction in some way, shape, or form could be around the corner if you lose yourself in the process and you don't know who you are. A lot of homeless out there don't know who they are, or they do know who they are, that they're a good person, but they don't get that type of feedback from somebody else. They get used to living a life where they're moving from place to place to place, and often it's done out of fear. Fear of what other people would think about them if they were to see them sleeping outside their home, or rational fear that comes from situations where they have been beaten by the police, or worse yet, where they wake up in the middle of the night and some punks are smashing their head in with a fire hydrant. These things have happened in this city. And again, young girls that find themselves trafficked here, horrible things happen to them because there is a spirit of dark lust that lives in this city. I'm not criticizing sex, only a borderline retarded person. And I say that out of respect. A challenged person could think such a thing. There are things that are consensual in this world, and there are things that are not consensual. And Portland is a hotbed for women being pushed into unconsensual things. Some of them have been brought from outside the city, and some of them are plucked from the bad neighborhoods from within the city. And in a future episode, we'll talk about that programming within consciousness that allows the abuse to take place. We need to address that, and we need to address that part of ourselves that allows ourselves to be abused by the system. Because there is something to our genetic wiring, all of us, that has a predisposition towards being a dominator or being dominated. Okay? I'll say that again another way. Being an abuser or someone that is being abused. Very few relationships, I feel, there's truly a middle or balance. There's usually a tendency for one to be on top or one to be dominant. And I don't think that we're seeing very healthy relationships right now in our world. There is massive division, and so much of this is manufactured. People say they want a solution. We need more love in our world. We need more compassion. We need to have less people just driving their cars down the street going, screw that person. They deserve to be homeless. In fact, they deserve to die. F them. Frock them. Frock them in the head. Who cares? They deserve it. They haven't tried hard enough. That's schizophrenia. When you say that the economy isn't good, that the dollar isn't good, but people that aren't doing as well as you deserve it, that's pretty psychotic. And that is exactly what I see right now in the Portland area. So the outlook for Portland's future looks pretty grim. I wouldn't be living here in the next couple of years if I were you. If you have any money or ability to get out, and if your home is worth a lot, I would consider selling your home in the next couple of years, because we are going to see, and we're wrapping this show up right now as we're closing, a massive crime wave. And I think the Zetas are going to set up an operation the next decade and start trafficking people out of here. I've had that feeling for years. People have laughed at me. It is clear that a lot of people think my material is a joke, as well as myself. And it's clear what the people of Portland think about me as I sleep, maybe outside your house tonight in my truck. This city is going to be dealing with a human trafficking crime wave it's never seen before in the history of the West Coast, the way things are going. And so we're going to have to really overhaul our priorities, I think, at this particular point in time. And it isn't about being cool, being hip, being a part of this clique, or judging other people because they have a different understanding of reality. I think there needs to be more love. I think that that's what a revolutionary is right now, a true revolutionary. Someone compassionate, someone that doesn't run around with spite for others, someone that cares about their city, someone that cares about their community, to the point where they will talk about the dark aspects of their community, even if outsiders that just arrived here said, oh no, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're talking about, hater. You know, all that childish nonsense, it's got to go. My website's alexansary.tv, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I would really like to start talking about content and not my own situation very soon, but I've been in a lot of pain trying to find some form of stability in this town, and it has been hell on earth, and it has opened up my eyes a little bit, I think, in terms of where the city is really going. My email is alex_ansary@hotmail.com. I do not have a cell phone. I do not have a mailing address. But hopefully in the future, I can accumulate at least a mailing address so people can contact me through that manner. I understand that there are some of you that are not on the internet at this time. One positive thing is you can go to the library and you can be on immediately without even signing up. Just use one of their express computers for 15 minutes. You can create an account with Hotmail and you can email me that way, and maybe I can call you back from that point on. But this is the end of our show. We will be back next week. It's going to be a little bit more structured. We're going to be focusing on the fracturing of consciousness within human society and the social effects of, and the path to the real self that we need to be on. I'm going to be focusing more on that topic. Thank you for watching. We're going to be back next week. Like I said, alexansary.tv is the webpage. And I want to thank Bill for running the control room in there. And I look forward to seeing you in the future and providing more outside-the-box insights, opinions, and other ideas. And that is the one and only reason that I came back to the Portland area, was to deliver some of these episodes, expressing an opinion that many of you are not familiar with. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.